All right, front loading misery. What exactly do I mean by front loading your misery? What I mean by front loading your misery is that you owe 10 years of misery, right? You owe 10 years of sweeping floors, throwing out garbage, being miserable, being the person at the bottom of the totem pole, not making a lot of money, asked to do things that you don't want to do, all that. You owe that. You're going to pay 10 years of misery one way or another. You're either going to voluntarily pay it or it's going to be taken from you. So you can either be one of those people that the first 10 years of, getting out of high school, you are just hustling. You're working hard. You're taking your turn at the bottom of the totem pole. You're, like I said, throwing out trash and doing all the things that most people, when they first come to jobs that they don't want to do, and you can start getting all of that stuff out of the way. Once you get that out of the way, then you can start building towards a future, right? So what happens if you don't front load your misery? Well, let's say you get out of high school, you're 18 years old, you're partying, you're hanging out, you're kind of doing dead end jobs, you're just trying to make ends meet. You bought a piece of garbage car and you're staying in an apartment with a bunch of buddies, so everyone pays just a couple of bucks, and you're just life is great. You're just chilling. You don't have really any responsibilities at all. Well, that's great, but instead of front loading your misery, you're front loading your partying or you're front loading your happiness, right? So that means that if at 18 you're partying till 20, 25, 30, whenever, then that means comes 30, that's when you're going to start paying your 10 years of misery. From either 30 to 40, or you're going to be one of those kind of people that never settle in, and you are consistently and constantly always changing jobs. And when you get happy feet and you go from one job to the next job to the next job to the next job, you're always at the bottom of the totem pole. So you never started your 10 years of misery. You never front loaded your misery. But your misery's coming. It sure is coming. Because if you don't front load it, and it doesn't happen between 18 and 28, and then you jump from job to job to job, from 28 to 38 to 48, whatever, the time's going to come when you're going to get your misery. And it may wind up being at the end of your life where you're 50, between 50 and 60, 60 and 70, where you realize that, wow, you know what? I never really planned for a future. I never really had good medical insurance. I never really had good, any dental, or I never really planned for any of those things. So now here I am in my 50s and 60s, and I don't really have anything to show for it. I don't have any retirement fund. I don't have anything. So I have to now work. I have to now figure out how to make ends meet. I need to now figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And usually what that causes is when there's normally 50 and 60-year-olds or 60 and 70-year-olds, and they're retiring and they're taking their retirement money and they're, living a life where they don't have to work, and they have a fixed income and all that, but they are living a relaxed life in their old age. People who don't front load don't get that opportunity. I often see people, at the supermarket or at any of these places, and I'll see a 60, 70-year-old lady or man or whatever, and they're bagging groceries, or they're, working behind a deli counter, or, in any job, you see it. And I often think to myself, now, is this one of those people that front loaded their misery? They had a good career throughout life, and at the end of their life, they're like, you know what, I'm kind of bored. So, I have the money I need, I have my retirement, I have all that other stuff, but I just don't want to sit at home. I like talking to people, I like, interacting and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go work at the local store, and I'm going to, work behind a deli counter or something, just part-time, just to pass my time. Or is this a person that doesn't have the opportunity, didn't have the choice to do this, but has to do this because they're spent their early life either not front loading their misery, not really, getting that all out of the way, and they went from job to job to job to a point now where they're like, I don't really have anything to show for it, so now I have to work bagging groceries, or I have to work at this deli counter, or I have to do these things. I can't stress the importance of making sure that while you're young and while you're physically able to deal with the misery of starting life as an adult or just starting life in general, that it's important to be miserable now. It's important to make all the sacrifices now so when you get a little bit older, you can start your path on success. Now is the time to make all the success, all the mistakes as you're young. You can make a mistake at 20 years old, take the wrong job, and realize it at 20, and then by 21 have the job that you wanted. You know, you could realize at 20 that I should have finished school and go back, finish school, and get a degree, and by 26 start your 10-year clock. There's a lot of things that you can do where you can make a mistake and recover from it. You know, when you're 35 years old and you make a mistake, it's a lot more difficult to recover for it, because when you start going to these new jobs and stuff, they want to know where you've been since you got out of high school. Well, why you got happy feet? Why you jumping from job to job? Why are you doing all of these things? Misery, early misery equals um, early misery equals late success or late happiness. Early happiness or early partying or early that builds late misery. And the last thing you want to do is be miserable and old. The last thing you want to do is not be settled in. The last thing you want to do. So when your friends are all saying like, oh, you don't need an education, or you don't need to, oh, screw this job. You don't really need it if that. Listen, I'm telling you, believe me when I tell you that you need to be miserable. They're gonna get to 10 years from you. They're going to get to 10 years from you. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. They're gonna get it. So the question is going to be, when is your 10 years going to start? Is your 10 years going to start now? Like right now, depending on no matter what age you're at. Does your misery start right now, where you say to yourself, okay, and listen, college counts. College counts towards that 10 years of misery, because for 4 years you're doing classes and you're doing all this other stuff, and it's not a pretty life. But you're setting yourself up for success. You're setting yourself up for a time where you're going to be able to get a job that you can look at as a career. You're going to start being able to put money away as in retirement. You're going to be able to start getting medical and dental and all that other stuff. Be more focused on the future than you are focused on what's happening today. Although it's nice to be, well off now, you have to plan for then, because then is coming, and it's coming quick. And you think that, 10 years or 15 years or 20 years is a long time and is way down the road, but I promise you, it is not. It's going to go in a blink of an eye. If you think about 10 years ago and how old you are now, think back to 10 years ago, and think back whether you were, 30, or whether you're 30 now and you look back to 20, you're like, wow, that was like months ago, it seems like. Or it doesn't make a difference. You could be 60 years old and look back to when you were 50 and you're like, wow, that was like a blink of an eye. No matter how you look at it, this time is going to continue moving. Nothing stops the hands of time. So if you're not properly planning now, I promise you, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable. So my advice is take all the opportunities you have now to make yourself miserable. When you go to work and they offer, training that nobody else wants to do, take the training. When they offer working on weekends that nobody else wants to work, take the extra hours. Working overtime, do it. Do all the things that are going to benefit you, to either put more money in your pocket now that you can put into stocks and bonds and mutual funds or whatever, or that you can have towards a retirement. The more you do now, the less you'll have to do then. The more miserable you are now, the less miserable you'll be then. So what do you want to do? Do you want to be a 21, 22, 25, 35, 40-year-old miserable person and get it out of the way now? Or do you want to wait till you're 60 years old and get it out of the way then? It seems like it's common sense. But the more people that I talk to and the more friends that I talk to about their scenarios and their situations, I say to myself, man, the guy's got a good life and all, but, he or she, or they never, were miserable. They didn't do their misery time. They're still chilling, but they don't have any they go from one job to another. Oh, this job is offering me a little bit more, so I change jobs. Or this job is closer to home or whatever. And I keep telling them, like, yo, you're just setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up for failure if you don't have the plan for the future, if you don't have the retirement scenario, if you don't have all that stuff going on. So think about the scenario that you're in right now. Think about the situation that you are. If you're 4 years into a job, stick it out. Become a manager. Become all that other stuff. And when your 10 years hits and you have a managerial position, you've been with a job for 10 years, you have success in it and all that other stuff, then you can decide if you want to take that job and use it to platform or jump into the same field as a manager somewhere else. That doesn't reset your clock. Because now you're in a managerial position, you have seniority, you have experience, you have everything in that field that's going to move you maybe to a higher paid job or whatever. But that 10 years has to be spent. That 10 years of misery, the 10 years of learning, the 10 years of gaining experience, the 10 years of just trying to figure it all out, that has to happen because it's going to happen, whether you like it or not. So you could be in control of it and make it happen, or you could not be in control of it and it's going to happen anyway. Think about the people that are in your life. Think about the people that are around you. Think about your friends and all that other stuff. And where are the stages are they in their life? Do you have that one friend that when you guys were out, going out to clubs and partying and drinking and having desert parties or out at the beach, where your friend was like, man, I can't. Sorry, I got to work this weekend. Or, no, man, I can't. I got to, do this. Or I got a paper that's due. Or I have whatever. And you're like, you're a sucker. Look at you. Everyone's out here partying. You're over there being a sucker. And now you look at where they are now, or where they're looking to, or they're headed to be. And you say to yourself, you look back and you say, man, I should have done that. I actually should have been writing papers, or I should have been, working on the weekends, or I should have been going home and getting some early sleep so I could, be better prepared for work or whatever and all that other stuff. So you're either going to front load your happiness, or you're going to front load your misery. You're either going to be happy in the beginning, or you're going to be happy at the end. You're going to be miserable in the beginning or miserable in the end. The choice is up to you. But I will tell you this, I front loaded my misery and I'm extremely happy I did. I started my misery when I was 17 years old and my misery lasted 21 years. So I am in a position now where I feel good about where I am. I feel confident in who I am, and I feel like I'm a good, productive member of society, and I feel like now with my future, I feel like I built a good future for myself to where I won't feel like there will be any misery in my life, financially and all that. I mean, of course, I could be paralyzed tomorrow, or I could go blind or whatever. But as far as financial misery and all that other stuff, I think that I set myself up well. So I feel like I have the position and I don't want to say the responsibility, but I have the experience to look back on people and say, hey, listen, I'm telling you this now. This is a good path to take, or you want to front load your misery now because of what's going to happen in the future. And if you don't do that, I'm telling you, this is from the scenario I've seen with the people that I grew up with, or the people that I've crossed paths with in life, or the people that I know now, that are my age, that I look at and I say, oh man, don't you wish you would have done this and that and the other thing? They all say, yeah, I should have took a different route. I should have did this. I should have front loaded my misery. So whether you're in the beginning and you can front load it now, go ahead, jump on it, front load it, volunteer, do all the stuff that you can do to get yourself as miserable as possible. And I don't mean that, literally, but you know what I mean. By getting the responsibilities and getting the training and moving up and working the late hours and do all that other stuff to make sure you're set up for success. And if you're 20 years old or 30 years old or 40 years old and you haven't experienced that misery yet, now's the time. Now's the time to do it and figure out how you could be miserable, because when you get to be 60 years old, if you didn't if you didn't plan it out, or you weren't spent your 10 years of misery, you're going to be 60 and 70 years old and your misery is going to hit. And then you're going to start wondering why you can't make ends meet, and why, you don't have money, and why all these other things, why you don't have medical or dental, and you'll be just praying for, I can't wait till Social Security kicks in so I can get Medicare and all that other stuff. But I'm telling you, it's a lot easier if you have the ability now to decide on your own in what scenario and how that misery is going to happen. So go for that misery.